What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind-the-scenes stuff. Arm yourselves, life stuff. I'm trying to combine 3 ideas for this one video, and I have a feeling they might not click. But we will try. There are moments you get so into something, everything else starts to disappear. I've been doing bunches of work stuff on my day off. I was working today. And that's another reason I've wanted to make this job work. It's not just that stuff needs to get done, I like doing it. Now, it does need to get done, but it's like everything else is going underground. When I write my notes, I get bunches of ideas for videos. But then when the video making urge kicks in, recently I've been managing to forget all those ideas or not know how to discuss them at the level I try to normally. On that note, we're talking about false ideals today. This has been coming up a lot, at least in my life recently. Initially, it was connected primarily with the manosphere nonsense, but it's everywhere and in all things. And what I'm noticing is it doesn't just have consequences. These false ideals don't just have consequences within these spheres they are pushed in. Once one of these ideals has been internalized by a group of people, there's a cascade effect. They're designed to manipulate or prey on one sort of person, but then other sorts of people start getting roped in too, reacting to these ideals. What do I mean by a false ideal? These are the things you should want, and these are the ways you go about getting them. And false ideals are designed to prey on insecure, dissatisfied, lost people. Because one of these ideals gives a person hope. Hope you don't need to be what you are forever. Hope for a way out. And the important thing about these ideals is what they tell you you should desire and the ways you should go about getting them hardly matter. Don't think of them as actual things or traits or actions. These are columns or pylons. Or another way to look at them would be like bones. They're important, but they're important only insofar as they hold meat or can put muscle on. The ability for this thing to host additional ideas that make the primary central pillar more defensible, sound more reasonable, sound more appealing. It doesn't matter what they are. All that matters is their ability to host shit that will maintain hope for the buyer, the person you are selling this false ideal to. And when I say sell, I don't just mean money. I mean power, influence, anything, any sort of gain. Ideal peddlers are people who sell IOUs to people who want solutions and salvations. As long as you do what I tell you to do, you will get what you want out of life, which is really nothing in specific, just not what you have or are presently. And you can trust me because of this array of things that sound reasonable, supporting the central idea, the hope column. A more basic example would be the Liver King thing. As long as you follow my stupid program that sounds reasonable because it's propped up with farcical readings of history, which is tricky because and this is, they're always, the good ones, the effective ones are always tricky because they are based, their reasonability, their ability to support that hope pylon comes from their ability to feel true. Combine that with some sciencey sounding stuff and a figurehead who is supposed to represent the end game of following this program. He is the false ideal. Literally false. All the steroids and whatnot. And I loved in the beige frequency video, he made the point. If people, or it's not like tribes people don't exist anymore. There are people who live by actual ancestral tenets, and they don't look like jacked up mass freaks. But none of any of this matters. You're presented something, presented well enough for you to buy in, hoping by buying in or by doing what you're told, you will, after some time or after you've accomplished any number of things, you will be no longer where you are or what you are. But this is tricky because it makes it sound like we're talking exclusively about scams, and we aren't. There are instances of ideals like these that are achievable and can be positive. The whole white picket fence nuclear family thing has been floating around incel circles for a long time now. Now, for me, that ideal has always felt odd. Because there are people, I mean, especially were people, but still are people, probably will be people, who have pursued the white picket fence dream, achieved it, and are happy. No steroids, no lies, just gentrified suburban bliss. What was formerly a working class dream has become an advertising scheme, but not even just advertising for shit for your money, but also advertising for your soul among all classes of people, hipsters especially. Now, why would you take issue with an ideal that isn't lying to you? It's because ideals like those, even ones that do work, don't work for everyone. But these sorts of ideals are tricky because they become better scams by merit of their working for some people. It's like you need a blood transfusion, and there's a guy selling super brand blood, and he's had 50 successful blood transfusions, customers who go to him, so you go to him and then you die. His successful customers were successful because he had the blood they needed. But those successes were used to market to people who have incorrect or incompatible blood types. But you don't know that. Maybe if we're talking about life ideals, you have a suspicion this ideal wouldn't work for you despite it being marketed as working for everybody. But again, these sorts of things are marketed to people most desperate for a way out, most desperate for hope. So they'll buy anything. Maybe they are reserved enough to notice a scam and avoid a total scam, but desperate enough to buy into a feasible scam because for some people it's not a scam. Their desperation blinds them to the fact this thing won't work for them. And you see this sort of thing all over the place. In fact, it almost seems like subcultures develop around a problem exclusive to them or common among them, and the particular scam they have collectively chosen to buy into. Because it's not just the scam advertising itself, once a person buys in, and even if it does work for them, especially if it doesn't, because it's all about the hope, they need to push those ideas on other people to make themselves feel justified, to make themselves feel like they haven't wasted their time and been duped. Subcultures almost feel like multi-level marketing schemes. You end up with groups of people pushing things on one another that probably won't work for most of them. Even if you are capable of successfully following these steps, are you someone who will feel satisfied with the result? Or did you do all of this in the first place because you are desperate and you can't handle the idea there's no way out? And I'm not saying there's no way out. I'm saying people are so desperate for hope, they will chain themselves to ideas and ideals that will keep them hopeless. Not just prevent them from finding their path, but also probably make their lives worse. But once one of these ideals takes hold, that's when you begin to see echoes, reactions. People outside the target market will start buying once an ideal takes hold hard enough. The ideal has developed enough clout, people who absolutely can't be the ideal start to try to fit themselves into the picture as part of the ideal. And that can blow up in a few ways, but it always makes the washouts, which will be most of you, worse. We like picking on women on this channel, but let's change gears and pick on women. Other women. As opposed to the white picket fence, traditionally masculine male ideal, who is, firstly, most of the time, if you get to that point, and you aren't that, you're trapped, and you are antagonized daily by your trad wife, some controlling bitch who wanted to get in on the new hotness, so she grabbed you, stupid, because all the actual men who would fit into that archetype have already been snagged up. She's stuck with you, and boy will she let you know it every day. Or you get one of these poor soul women, desperate for anything, more desperate for hope than you are. She attaches herself to you, because this is supposed to be one of the things going on, and you feel trapped and suffocated and you're miserable, but because she sucks, you take it all out on her. Again, everybody's miserable on that side. Let's go over to the girl boss side. Imagining the trad wife equivalent in men to girl bosses gives me the chills. Because what this dude does is what the trad wife does for similar reasons. Disempowers you under the pretense of empowering you, forcing you into being his idea of what you should want to be. It's the exact same thing. You look at these women who proudly call themselves soccer moms, and they talk about their lives and their marriages and their children, and you can feel how controlling they are, and you can feel their resentment for everyone. That's why they're like that. That's why they're controlling. That's why they need to posture daily that they have achieved something and are happy, because they've achieved their own misery. They're unhappy. I think the disconnect between trad wives and husband wives is popularity. Trad wives are still in right now, where their male equivalents have been mocked thoroughly, but I think because there's less attention on them these days, people are less likely to pay attention to the actual traits of the men who attach themselves into this system in this way. Ultimately, for the women's side of this, it comes down to, how do you feel knowing you are dating a Redditor because you pursued a lifestyle you thought would make you less miserable? The ultimate point in all this is, wherever one of these ideals hits, if it hits big, an ecosystem begins to grow around it. An ecosystem of desperation and misery. That's easy to see in social media. But the point is, there isn't one ideal, one-size-fits-all solution to every person. And that should be obvious, but it isn't, because hope and desperation blind us. There might not be a way out for you. Or there might be one, but you fail to find it. Those possibilities are frightening, so it's easier to gulp down an anesthetic and then try to convince other people to gulp it down. And of course you need to convince other people to gulp it down, because at some point for you, you realize you're not anesthetized anymore. It's wearing off, because it didn't resolve anything in the first place. I think it's best to take the position there isn't a way out, but for some reason some things are preferable to others, but that's only for me, because there are people who have achieved an ideal. They are happy. And you probably aren't one of these people, but even if you are, it's good to be conscious of what's happening. If you made it, it's because you made it into something that is suited to you. What is suited to you won't be suited to everybody. And if you haven't made it, maybe yet, maybe ever, it's useful to remember what these ideals are, what they come out of, and what is drawing you to them before you commit to anything. I think you're better off trying to find your own way, especially knowing you won't get anywhere, because that means if you do find something that works for you, then it's golden. But I hate feeling tricked. I hate feeling manipulated. I hate feeling trapped, especially when I allow it to happen at the hands of someone I view as lesser than I am, because I am desperate for hope. People like to complain about recognizing problems and then not supplying answers. Have you considered the possibility there might not be an answer, or you might need to find your answer for yourself? This entire issue, this very ending part of it, springs from people's frustration at being reminded their anesthetic is anesthetic, not a solution, and they're pissed because it stopped working earlier than it should have. Now, because they'll never go out, or not even go out, go in and try to find a solution that works for them, even if it's impossible to find one, because that's too scary, or that's too painful. And what happens if there is, ultimately, truly, no answer to your existential problem? Are you intent on living your entire life in fear of what you are? How many people do you intend to drag down with you on your way down? Are you comfortable tricking someone out of possibly finding their path in life if it means you don't need to feel as bad about the fact you failed to find yours? We're beginning to go off track, but there's no proper way to end this video. Beware the consequences of desperation for hope. Maybe you'll be lucky and the popular thing will self-actualize you. More likely it won't. Get in touch with yourself and figure out what you need to do. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.